We'll call on Ms. Anisha Gordhan to address us first. She is the firstborn child. Anisha.
Your Excellency, Mr. President Ramaphosa, distinguished leaders, ladies and gentlemen, friends and family, all protocols observed. Sanibonani, Dumelang, Molweni, Goeiemiddag, good afternoon and namaste. Your presence here today means everything to our family. The outpouring of love since the passing of my dad has been a great source of comfort for us. We gather here today to honor the extraordinary life of Pravin Gordhan, a name that will forever be etched in the heart of our nation. I thank you for honoring him and for celebrating my father. He loved his country and its people. I'd like to start by asking you to picture South Africa where the cost of bread is 200 rand, where billions of dollars have been paid to Russia for a failed nuclear program, where access to clean water is limited to a bucket per household per day, where load shedding lasts for days, a country where there is judicial incompetence, military interference in politics, where the rule of law and access to medication and basic medical care is non-existent. This is what a failed state looks like. South Sudan, Yemen, Syria are but a few examples. We were very close to this. But this man, our father, is one of the few courageous and honest souls that saved our beautiful country and its people from the brink of collapse. My father, Pravin Gordhan, his eldest brother, Maniklal, and his baby sister, Shanta. My dad, or Daddy-o, as I called him, grew up in a humble home. As a child, my grandmother used to read him stories from the Bhagavad Gita. This was one of his first memories of feeling triggered in his early life to fight against injustices. You know him as the activist, the freedom fighter, the civil servant, and liberator. But today I would like to take you through a journey with me, a journey through the life of Pravin Gordhan and his struggle for freedom, seen through the eyes of a child. For through the eyes of a child, we see the world as it should be. The journey begins in 1977. I was born to Pravin and Pravina into a family of freedom fighters. My mother, a brave stalwart of the struggle in her own right, endured gruesome attacks and challenges from the security branch police since she was a child. Her father, my maternal grandfather, Natu Babinia, first fought in the Indian independence struggle and then spent 16 years as a prisoner on Robben Island. My cousins, Ketso, Saguna, and Hasu, were dedicated and committed activists. And my uncle and aunt, Maniklal and Jaya, were the backbone of the family. All 7 adults and I lived in a 3-bedroom flat in Prince Edward Street, Durban. 116 Prince Edward Street and later Gordon's Pharmacy below the flat were one of the key headquarters of the mass democratic movement. It was like an old-fashioned telephone exchange where people could be connected, given clear messages either to execute on or pass on. It was the nerve center that linked to nerve centers in Cape Town, Johannesburg, and later Lusaka. Even under banning orders, it still operated effectively as a communication hub. Some of the most regular visitors to our home included Yunus Muhammad, Yusuf Vauda, Vish Supasad, Vidhu Vedalanka, the Ram Gobind family, George Supasad, Farooq Mir, Bamba and Dolly Pillay, Swami Gaundan, Archie Gumede, Virgil Bonaham, Krish Govinda, Roy Padiachi, Paul and Ursula David, Selena, Anesh, Maggie, Charm, Deepak Oteps, Nadi and Prissy Jinabai, Daya Pillay, Jerry and Zubi Kuvadia, and Spider Jagannath, Alfantina and Rasheen, to name a few. These are activists who collectively made things happen, and the community that supported my dad, our family and each other through the tyranny of the apartheid state. Thanks to all of these courageous souls, I had many godmothers and godfathers, many of whom I am still very close to today. A story that is often told and which speaks to the type of relationships that existed at the time is the process of selecting a name for me. I was without a name for a few months when I was born, and it was put to a group of activists to democratically select a name for me. Yunus, Mohammed, Jerry, and Zubi named me Anisa, which means a pleasant companion. My dad then built on this and named me Anisha, meaning a new dawn or without darkness. I'm still known and saved on Auntie Zubi's phone as Anisa to this day. The activity at our flat in Prince Edward Street brought significant attention from the security establishment. As a child, I remember raids in the early hours of the morning, tapped telephones, and constant monitoring of our household. During my years as a baby and a toddler, my mother would hide secret documents in my nappy, and when the security branch police came to raid the house, she would pass me to my aunt, who would then take away the documents and hide them. In 1977, when my dad was under a banning order, the police raided our home. They spotted a file on the top shelf labeled ANC. They visibly showed excitement, only to discover the file contained my mother's notes from her nursing degree, and ANC referred to antenatal clinics. Whenever there was a big campaign or a new release from Robben Island, our home was abuzz with planning, sending out activists to carry out key tasks, and always a place to grab a bite to eat. My aunt, my second mother, my ba, always ensured there was a delicious home-cooked meal to feed the many activists that popped in and out of our house. Her nurturing, motherly nature offered a place of comfort to many of the activists. My uncle, my dad senior by 12 years, and my second dad worked tirelessly in the sari shop, Bangalore Sari House, below the flat to provide for the family. He and my mum were the only two breadwinners at the time. Together they supported and largely supported our family and my dad's career as an activist. One of my earliest memories was the security branch police coming to take my father away to detention when I was 4 years old. My father was planning Griffiths and Tenge's funeral at the time, and the cops found pamphlets in our home. As they were taking my father away to detention, he told me to look at the faces of the security branch police and remember these men who were taking my father away. These men, he said, were working against the liberation of this country, and he taught me to call them oinks, meaning pigs. When I was 6 years old, my father was again detained. We had heard through an inside contact that he was at Sierra Swart prison. At the time, we had one of those telephones with a circular dial. Unbeknown to the adults in the house, I called Sierra Swart. I asked to speak to the oinks, and I told them that I wanted them to bring my daddy home. To this day, no one understands how I found the number, nor how I knew to use the telephone at the time. But the innocence of a child still didn't deter the oinks. The support provided by the community around us is what made the struggle years so rich and colorful for me. Brave people who would sacrifice everything they had in the name of the liberation struggle. Audrey and Max Coleman started the Detainees Parents Support Committee. They stood up to the apartheid security branch by organizing families of detainees and providing financial and other support where they could. The launch of the DPSC was held at St. Anthony's Church in Durban. I was 6 years old and was kept up until midnight to light the inaugural candle. As midnight struck and the candle was lit, there was a raid on the church. The police fired tear gas and brutally attacked the attendees. My mother hid me on the floor of the back seat of the car and covered me with her jacket. When it was all over, we emerged stronger and more resilient. My father's baby sister, Shanta, played a pivotal role in his life. They are 15 months apart and remained close until his dying day. She was his fiercest supporter and protector. She endured endless pressure from her family and risked her life on many occasions to protect her brother. On one occasion, we had found out that my father had been detained and was in the hospital because of an eye infection. My mother and aunt went to visit the hospital. The ward that my father was in was guarded by the police, so there was no way of seeing him. But my aunt innovatively took off her gold bangle and rolled it into the ward. She put down my cousin Hema, who was just a few months younger than a year, on the floor to crawl after the bangle. My aunt then bravely ran after Hema, saw my father, and managed to get a few secret messages to pass on. Growing up, my father tried his best to give me a small semblance of what a normal childhood would look like whenever he could. He would surprise me at the back door of a ballet concert with flowers or pop into to school for a 5-minute visit during break. My cousin Deepa fondly remembers a weekend we spent with my dad at Auntie Lali and Uncle Pat's home in Hillcrest. My father, my cousin Kamal, Deepa and I spent the weekend swimming, watching movies, and eating loads of ice cream. This was the only holiday we spent together. During his underground days, visits with my father included disguises, which were mostly crazy wigs, clandestine swapping of cars, and eventually a milkshake at the Tropicana restaurant in Albert Park. Non-whites were not allowed to enter the restaurant, but you could be served in your car. Most of the time with my father was spent at mass meetings, at underground meetings, toy-toying on the streets of Durban, and fleeting glances in a police station or a courtroom. The energy at the ANC memorial held last night at Kendra Hall felt like one of those mass meetings. My father would have loved it. It was kids like Kaylin, which was Alfantina Karim's son, Anushka, my lifelong friend and sister, and the older generation of kids, the Ram Gobins, the Davids, the Pillais, and I. We were the kids that provided a refreshing distraction to the serious revolutionary rhetoric of the day. Being a fly on the wall of these endless meetings provided amazing insight into the struggle, how it was strategized, and the heated debates that existed. But little did I know the impact of what was taking place at the time. One such heated and divisive debate was in the 80s and at our Prince Edward Street apartment. It was whether to participate in the tricameral elections in 1984, whether to boycott or work in the system to bring it down. The decision to boycott and create the UDF were probably the most significant decisions of that period. The rest, as they say, is history. During Operation Vula, we didn't know where my father was for months. He was in a prison in Bethlehem. But on one fateful day, the security branch police had brought him to Durban and taken him to the wheel in Point Road to get themselves a meal at Wimpy. My father managed to tug on the emotional strings of one of the cops and explained that it was my birthday. He then asked them to please allow him to buy his daughter a birthday card and arranged for it to be thrown over the wall at our home. It was at this point that we knew that he was alive. So even as an activist, he still took time to be a father. My aunt one day hurriedly took my cousins and I out of school. We had no idea why or where we were going. We got to the Durban Magistrates Court, and it was the Operation Vula trial. We were excited that we were going to see my father after many, many months. We were not allowed to have any personal time with him, but as he walked up the stairs, he stroked my hand. And as he sat in the dock waiting, he kept looking back at me and smiling to check if I was okay. When they took him away, I had to be restrained by my aunt and others. I wanted to run after my father, and I couldn't accept that he wasn't coming home with us. When Madiba was released from Robben Island, he came to visit the Operation Vula detainees' families at the University of Durban Westville. I was 14 years old then. Madiba looked at me and said, I got my looks from my beautiful mother and my handsome grandfather with whom he had spent 16 years on Robben Island. He put me on his lap and spoke to me about the great sacrifices my father was making for the country and for the sake of future generations. His praise for Pravin provided great comfort to me. During CODESA, there was a term that a political party wanted to negotiate. My father refused to agree to it. One day I was going to see my father, and my uncle received a call saying that if Pravin didn't agree to this term, they would kidnap me and hurt me. For months after, I was locked up for my protection, but this did not stop my father. He moved from activist to expert negotiator and played a crucial role in steering South Africa to democracy. In 1991, my father married Vanita Raju, and together they made a formidable pair to face the challenges that came in the years to follow. He became part of the Raju family. In 1992, his baby Priyesha was born. I watched him as he became the doting, devoted father to Priyesha, and he was just so proud of her. To the Raju family, thank you for all you have done for my father, for the many sacrifices you have made, and for all the cherished memories you shared with him. He had a special place in his heart for each and every one of you, and I thank you for showering him with so much love. To his surrogate sons, James, Viraj, Yaska, he loved you all. To James, thank you for taking such good care of my dad. I call you a blessing, and you really are. From 1994, I watched my father become a dedicated, hardworking civil servant. He worked in the local government sector and was instrumental in drafting our constitution. He worked tirelessly to realize the vision of a non-racial, non-sexist, democratic South Africa. He worked to restore truth to politics, to repair the harms of inequality, and to move towards social and economic justice. He fiercely defended the democracy he fought so hard for. What people don't understand, and what we all need to be educated about, is that the period between 2009 and 2018 can only be remembered as a period in which most state institutions were ruined and pillaged. Technocrats were removed forcefully, whistleblowers were silenced, and all maintenance spend stolen. That is what the new government inherited in 2018, an almost failed state. To blame my father for the dysfunctioning of state-owned enterprises is both ignorant and factually incorrect. He was determined. He was determined to protect the jobs at SAA, Transnet, Eskom, Denel, and he spoke endlessly of protecting families from further hardship. He did what he could and worked furiously to protect our institutions and to lay a solid foundation for future generations. He faced brutal attacks during these years. Our personal safety was compromised, smear campaigns were designed by Bell Pottinger, bank accounts in Canada were created, and we were discredited as a family. All of this ultimately led to many comrades and friends distancing themselves from my father and our family. Despite this, he remained unshaken and more determined than ever. The fence-sitters that didn't want to take a stand now stand on platforms and loudly sing his praises, but the courage to connect the dots and stand for change came too late. He repeatedly said, "Our souls are not for sale, and our country is not for sale." My father's integrity was never compromised. I watched in awe as he took on the fight against corruption. After a series of attacks, I asked him one day how he could so steadfastly move forward with such precise focus. He told me to never let the noise disturb the fight to meet the end objective, to end corruption. After the 27 questions, the arrest warrants, the unintelligent intelligence report, and being so gravely disappointed by his own comrades, I asked him if he was able to sleep. His message to me was, "I won't allow these thugs to steal my precious sleep. I sleep with a clear conscience of doing nothing wrong." On Tuesday, when my father found out his condition was terminal, I once again watched his courageous spirit confront death. He methodically and systematically explained what he wanted as his last wishes. Many of his family and lifelong comrades visited him that day. His message to them was simple: take care of you and your families. Our work is not done, and the fight to protect the needy and uplift the poor must continue. It takes more than just an individual to be a great man like my father, to be an activist and a freedom fighter. It takes a support structure and a strong community. My father had this community in the ANC, but he also had this community in his family and comrades. I would like to thank all of you for being by our side during this difficult time. To Momo, Adrian, Vidhu, Teps, Derek, Trish, Ranjani, Nishan, Nava, Kanti, Fuad, Intabi, Sanjay, Ashwin, and many others. To Mr. President for being an amazing support structure to my dad and a brother to him. We appreciate you and we are eternally grateful. You have all so loved by my dad. It is a tough road to renewal. There's no easy walk to freedom. The essence of change is struggle, in a positive sense. What we need is a social and political coalition for renewal and change, one in which egos and individualism must be set aside for the great cause of saving a wonderful movement. My father was proud of what he helped build, but he was distraught at the rise in African nationalism, the uncaring and selfish acts of the greedy, the conspicuous consumption and unprincipled behavior by career politicians. But what we have witnessed over the past week is South Africans bonding around a common purpose, coming together to mourn the loss of one of our heroes. His heroism is reflected not only in his sacrifices from this country, but from the respect he commanded from all corners of the globe. The patriotism and social cohesion displayed over the past week is what would have made my father proud, and this is what he strived for during his life. Let us build. Let us stand up and fight for this beautiful country which has so much opportunity. Let us protect what we have for future generations, and let us build a nation that will make Pravin proud. Not bury our heads in the sand, not to lose hope, and not to feel powerless, but to recognize the immense strength that lies in our hands as a diverse, talented, and vibrant family of South Africa. Let us complete his unfinished work to build a stronger, more unified, more inclusive, great nation of South Africans. I end with one of his favorite quotes by Nelson Mandela. I am fundamentally an optimist. Whether that comes from nature or nurture, I cannot say. Part of being optimistic is keeping one's head pointed towards the sun, one's feet moving forward. There are many dark moments when my faith in humanity was sorely tested, but I would not and could not give myself up to despair. That way lays death and defeat. Today we mourn the dead, tomorrow we live for them. Hamakashle, Dad. Until we meet again, I love you.